explain the procedure that was taken and the emotion people had when it occurred?
Well, we lived in a house that had a lot of windows, of course, and you had to have dark curtains up at every window because when you had an air raid, my father was an air raid warden, and he would put on his helmet and go out with his flashlight and walk up and down the street, and if your house had any light on it, they would knock on the door and make you either turn out the lights or put your curtain up that you had. People had blackened curtains if they had really light curtains up at the window. And we had a lot of air raid drills, even in school. In school we had air raid drills, and we all had to line up in the hallway and sit crouched over with our heads between our legs and stay there till the drill was over. So it affected our lives a lot.
Were you ever scared?
I don't remember being scared because I think at the time I was so young that it was just, something that we had to do. And they had never bombed the United States, so I guess my parents and I didn't think that would ever come to pass, but we had to be ready just in case.
Okay. What was your opinion of the Nazis or Adolf Hitler as a child?
Oh, well, we all thought that, he was just a terrible person, what he did with the Jews and the concentration camps and all that. But, like I say, at an age that I was at, our parents were affected more by the war, of course, than we were. But nobody, believe me, liked him.
We know that movies during the war were censored by the government. Can you think of a movie that greatly glorified the heroicness of Americans? If so, what movie, and how did it impact your perspective of the war?
Oh, gosh. The movies, the kind of movies I saw at my age were like Bambi and, Lassie Come Home and all that stuff. I didn't go to see any movies like that. I always went to the Saturday matinee and they showed movies for kids, basically.
When men were off at war, an iconic woman named Rosie the Riveter gained attention in the active role of replacing jobs with men. Is there anyone that you know that, or how did this, affect your life? Because women started to play more of the men's role, and there was a saying that when, women are wearing the pants. Do you know anyone that kind of took this role and got a job that really was a men's job?
No, I didn't really. I knew that existed, of course, when the men all went to war. The women had to, take their place. But there wasn't anybody that I knew, either in my family or my neighborhood, that affected.
Okay. During the war, lunches were rationed. In school, did you have warmer cooked lunches, and did they offer lunches?
No. I went to a small elementary school. It was just one grade of each grade from 1 through 6. And it was a block away from where I lived. So I had to come home every day for lunch. We didn't have cafeteria.
Was it because of the war where they weren't really able to get the food?
No, they didn't provide lunch because everybody that went to the school walked.
Okay.
It was a walking school.
For your holidays during the 40s, were your holidays like the holidays today, where, for instance, you had turkey on Thanksgiving?
Oh, yes. My grandmother, grandfather, and all my aunts and uncles lived in New York because that's where I originally came from. We had moved to Pennsylvania when I was 9 years old. So on holidays, not so much Christmas, but Thanksgiving, we all went to New York and went to my grandmother's and had turkey dinner, just like I'm going to go to your mom's for Thanksgiving dinner. It was no different.
Were your siblings grateful for whatever they were given, or is it much like society today where we constantly want more?
Well, we came from a strictly middle-class family, and I think that we we were provided everything we needed to live a comfortable life, and we didn't really want a lot in those days. And you didn't have all the gizmos and gadgets that you have today. So, you know, things were simple. You had board games, you played jump rope. I jump rope for hours in the schoolyard. We played,
Double Dutch.
yeah, double dutch, but we played with,
Hopscotch.
what am I trying to think of?
Hopscotch?
Where you, throw it on the ground. Jacks. We played jacks. Till our hands were like from the concrete.
Very itchy.
I'd have to have them all Band-Aids all up here, because we used to play so much. Those kind of games. And we, you know, they rode bikes in the neighborhood, and we went to the swimming pool every summer, which we walked everywhere, because my father was a salesman, and he was not home from Monday till Friday night. So my mother, you know, didn't have a car to drive. We only had the one car. And of course with rationing, he used it for work, and that's all. On the weekends you couldn't go anywhere because you could only have so much gas. So everything was rationed. We had, my grandfather fortunately was a butcher. So he, in those days, we had meat rationing and food rationing. You had coupons for everything. And he would give us jars full of these little coupon things that we could use to get meat. So we never had to worry about having enough coupons for our meat. We were lucky that way. We always ate good. That was one good thing I remember. People were eating Spam. If you know what Spam, it was never a thing that we ever had in our house, but I know my girlfriend used to eat it about 4 or 5 nights a week, and I used to think, oh, I'm glad I have to eat that, because it looked just like the food I used to give my dog.
What about the Victory Garden?
Oh yeah, we had a Victory Garden in our backyard. Everybody had a garden and grew their own vegetables. And my job was to go out and pick the beans, string beans, every morning. So I think we must have had string beans for every dinner, every night in the week. Not too much like different than what I'm eating here. We have lots of string beans at Aunt's Choice too.
Still looking like
What piece of technology that was invented shaped your daily life as a child?
Oh, probably television more than anything. In 1950, we got our first television set. Before that, we all used to sit in the living room and listen on a Sunday night to the radio, to the, you know, the mystery shows and whatever was on. And then when television came, oh my gosh, that was fabulous. And I think you were, we didn't have too many channels in those days, maybe 3 at the most, if that.
still worth listening to radio.
Oh yeah, right. But you know, the shows were in the beginning were, you know, pretty simple. I mean, nothing like you have today. These big extravaganzas and CSIs and all that. So.
What was one of your favorite childhood hobbies growing up?
I used to my mother used to do needlework, needlepoint, and she taught me how to needlepoint, and I used to do that with.
What was one of your favorite childhood hobbies growing up?
I did needlepoint with, my mother taught me how to do needlepoint. She used to knit and crochet and do needlepoint. And so she taught me to do needlepoint, and I used to do that. And then we used to have these spools, remember? And you used to make the long things that used to come out of the spools of thread. I forget what you called that. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
It was a
I
spool,
did
a
knitting.
long spool, and it had four nails in the top.
Oh,
And you used to wind the yarn,
Weaving.
around it
Weaving.
and pull it down.
Weaving.
There was a hole in it.
And what did you do with that? What was the
was
purpose
weaving.
of it?
Yeah, you could make pot holders.
Yeah,
and all
we made
that.
lots of pot
Oh
holders
yeah,
and rug, little
right. And you could sew them together and make a mat, you know,
Okay.
placemat or
Okay.
what. Pretty simple, but when you're 9, 10 years old, you know, that's about it.
Were women's sports, like, was that available in your school growing up? Because a lot of times that they didn't have sports for women.
In elementary school, I don't think we had any organized sports at all. None that I remember. When I got to junior high school, when I was in 8th grade, I played field hockey. And I loved that. Yeah.
Fashion plays a huge part in everyday life for kids. Was it that way with you as a child? If so, what was one of your favorite clothing items that was like, that everyone had or wanted?
Gee, I don't remember ever having jeans. Do you ever
No.
remember? Jeans wasn't a thing that we wore when we were young.
I remember bobby socks and
Bobby
saddle
socks
shoes.
and saddle shoes. But we always
That was
had,
a little bit
we didn't wear slacks. We always wore dresses and skirts and blouses. And when we went out, we wore hats, gloves, pocketbooks, patent leather shoes, I remember. My mother buying me, you know, all that, a coat. Like you had a spring coat for Easter. You had to have a spring coat. You had to have patent leather shoes, a pocketbook, a hat, and a dress. So really, you know, we used to get dressed, and you didn't see any woman wear pants, ever. Never. We never wore slacks. Even to school, that wasn't anything that, you know, anybody did.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me interview you, Grandmom.
It's been my pleasure, Allison. I hope
Okay, part 2. With my second grandmother, we will be discussing urban culture during